This is Lab 1 Charge Tapes by Sujit Manigati. The purpose of this lab was to determine excess electric charge on household objects, and we used clear tape to do so. We explored the physical property of charge using Coulomb's law and then visualized how charge affects behavior. Skipping ahead to the results, we found that the tape had a negative charge of negative 1.21 times 10 to the negative 8 coulombs. Uh, the the procedure of this experiment was to create a U-tape by pulling off a tape strip off the base strip on a table, and then make sure that the tape had a negative charge by rubbing a plastic pen and then seeing that there was a repulsion with the tape. And then we created two U-tapes as using the two steps above. And then I held one tape under the other until the one on top floats, and then recorded that vertical distance between the tapes. Uh, the For the physical model, I assumed that the physical model has two tapes that repel each other because they had the same negative charge, and that and then the top tape floats because there was no net force in the y direction. However, for the physical model, I did have to make a couple of assumptions. I assumed that the tapes were point charges and that they had the same charge. I assumed that it was a perfect lattice of atoms, and that I also disregarded air resistance. And then I assumed that I could use the tape's length to find the mass of the tape, and then also with that, the number of atoms on the tape itself. I found that the tape length was 0.216 meters, the tape width was 0.0225 meters, and that the vertical distance was 0.025 meters, the distance between the tapes. And then I used those values to find the tape weight, surface area, and then the number of atoms on the piece of tape. And then with those derived and recorded values, I found the electric force on the tape B by tape A, and it was just the negative gravity force. I found the tape charge using Coulomb's law. I found the excess number of electrons by just dividing the tape charge by the charge of a single electron, and then with that excess electron number, I just found the ratio of excess electrons to atoms. And as you can see, even though there's a lot of electrons, there's way more atoms, so the ratio of excess electrons to atoms is actually very small. Uh, and also, I used Glowscript and VPython to make the requisite calculations and then output the graphical results so we can use that to model the situation that is happening. And so I just copied over the constants from my recorded values, like the tape length, the tape mass per meter, the distance, atom length, and the tape width and the electron charge. And the reason I did this is in case I ever wanted to change any of the values, it would just change in the calculations itself, so that way I don't have to redo everything by hand. And so I just copied over the same calculations on the previous slides onto Glowscript, so that way, and then I added print statements, so that way when I run the program, I can see all the information in a neat and nice manner. And but by doing that, I could every time I run the program, I can just get like a text box that shows all the information that I could use, like the ratio of electrons to atoms, the charge, the number of excess electrons, the number of atoms, and the surface area. Uh, and so the main graphical output, the two blue spheres represent the point charges of the tape, and then the two red arrows represent the repulsive electric force, and then the green arrow represents the gravitational force of the top tape. And so if the tapes if if the tapes had a positive charge, if they both had positive charges, they would still repel because as long as if they're the same charge, they still repel. So even if it switches, it doesn't matter. And then it's important to handle the charged tapes as little as possible because if you hold the tape in a rough manner, the electrons would transfer to neutral objects, which in this case is your hand, and then it would just diminish the results of the experiment. You wouldn't get as much of a vertical distance as you could.